Welcome to the Art of Listening to Your Body podcast. My name is Dr. Jinong and I'm your host. I'm a cathartic release therapist, professionally trained as an osteopath, psychosomatic therapist, Western acupuncturist, and herbalist. I'm fascinated by the mind-body connection and how your physical body is a manifestation of your emotional state. I help people get unstuck from their chronic pain, whether it be physical or emotional, and live the life they truly desire, grounded in values and driven by purpose. My aim is to create awareness to the underlying emotions behind pain, injury, and disease in the body, as well as behavioural dysfunctions and mental imbalances that present. I do this using a unique blend of Eastern and Western philosophies and a good dose of intuition. Join me to learn more about the story of your body, what different issues may indicate, how to release emotions so that you can prevent problems, as well as inspiring pain story interviews. All right, this is a podcast that I have been wanting to share for months, if not the almost couple of years that I have been doing this work. So you know that I talk a lot about processing emotions and how I teach people how to release their emotions. I also teach people about chakras. And I have dabbled and spoken about that through certain interviews and different podcasts. And chakras is what really helps people work out what emotions might be underlying and therefore what it is they actually need to process. And then I've talked about Ayurvedic doshas, and you may have heard me reference in different podcasts. This is a whole nother topic. I'll do a separate podcast on this. Now is finally the time. And for those of you who have done a release course with me or a practitioner training, is that these are my 3 core pillars. The release process, teaching people how to process their emotions, teaching and creating awareness about a very simplified chakra system to uncover underlying emotions. And then I love using the Ayurvedic doshas to personality type people, more than just how they present on a verbal level, but how they interact with life and the environment. So I have just finished my final week with the 3rd round of the live release group. It is something that I absolutely love. And my call a couple of weeks ago was about doshas. And what I'm going to do is actually read out 3 social media posts that I did way back at the beginning of 2021. Because the reason I've taken so long to share this with you is because I tend to give a lot of information and it can get overwhelming. That's the pitta in me. That's the pitta dosha in me. And I just think, how can I give enough information that this is going to pique your interest without making it too complex? And I decided to share this at the start of my dosha teaching call on the release course to give people a fun overview of how we can use doshas. So the way I use them and the way you might use them is very different, because I have my therapy hat on and I love to use the doshas to gauge how I'm going to work with someone. Now, initially, when I started working with people, I realized that I really enjoyed working with people that were like me. And I will share a little bit about my dosha. And I realized that when I learned about doshas, that people have got different makeups and different personality types and different ways they respond. So it was really helpful then for me to understand someone's individual makeup and constitution so that I could actually adapt the way I was working with them, rather than getting frustrated with how they were responding or not responding to my work. So I was able to take the me part out of it, me being frustrated with them, and actually see that they were getting results, but they had their own way of getting there. So as a practitioner, it's really helped me. And I do teach it on my practitioner training as well. It's helped me understand and be more compassionate for people, and allowed me to work with a wide variety of people rather than just a very, very niche group. And for those of you who are familiar with my pain story, I tend to share it on a lot of guest podcasts or guest calls that I do. And it is one of the very, very earliest podcasts that I have on my podcast. It's called My Pain Story. Is that I didn't really get interested in doshas until I had my own real life experience. And this is when I was, in summary, I was experiencing a lot of cystic acne issues. And it was in particular when I moved to a hot and humid environment, of which I later discovered that my dosha type does not really like heat and humidity. Not that it doesn't really like it, really doesn't like it. And I had my threshold, and my skin condition got so much worse. Not only that, but my health really suffered. And it wasn't until I moved away from this environment. So that was hot, humid Brisbane. And then I moved to Wanaka, which is where I desired to live and where I live right now, which is much more dry and temperate. It still gets a bit hot, but nowhere near as hot as Brisbane or Melbourne, which is where I was born. So when I did a lot of emotional work, but when I moved, I saw a significant difference in my skin in particular. So without going into that in detail and kind of repeating that podcast, I would recommend you go back and listen to that. I think it's like the first or the second podcast. It's one of the very first podcasts that I did, which has really helped me dive into this work. So I'll pull on that a little bit for you, but let me dive in and share these social media posts that I did a while back. And it had quite a bit of interaction. So to give you a heads up, there's 3 doshas, and we have all 3 of them within us. Now, I'm not going to go in and teach you in depth, but you will resonate with this if you are very primarily one dosha. And some of you are going to be able to relate to bits and pieces of the others because you have all 3 of them in you. But this is what I felt like would be the best to share on a podcast, to give you a glimpse into doshas, which is just a huge topic in itself. And I keep my teaching very basic around it, and that is enough for a lot of people. So I just want you to listen to this and see if it relates to you. Guess which dosha this is? You complain about the wind. You get that tight neck and blame it on the drafts or air conditioning. When it's a beautiful, sunny, but breezy day, you prefer to close the door or the windows. The wind gets you agitated and flighty, maybe feeling scattered and anxious. You're more of a grazer when it comes to eating, and you forget to eat when you're stressed. You're a light sleeper that loves to rise early with the birds. Your hands and feet are always cold. Maybe you have Raynaud's or chilblains. When out of balance, you're prone to constipation and maybe a bit of insomnia. At your worst, you might experience thyroid issues. You love big, wide, open spaces. You feel trapped when you're inside. Big crowds are overwhelming. When it all gets too much, you check out. You love summer and being warm. Winter is hard for you. You're creative, lively, and energetic at your best. If this is you, you may think that everyone hates the wind, but they don't. This is the amazing thing about doshas. They tell you more about who you truly are and help you understand yourself at your best and when you're getting pulled out of balance. This dosha type is Vata. So there are a lot more nuances and details to someone who is a Vata, but I think that if this resonates with you, this is where your interest will get piqued in the doshas. So let me move on, but do know that there is a lot more detail that helps me work out if someone is this Vata dosha type. Guess which dosha this is. Once you get to know the doshas, you can look at someone and understand them and not be so triggered. You get to know when they thrive and when they don't. But first, you get to know your own. Not everyone is like you. Okay, onwards. The heat makes you boil from the inside. You love an icy water to cool you from the inside, but your digestive fire isn't the biggest fan. Humidity drives you nuts. Holidays are fine, but not to live in on the daily. You become more irritable as the temperature rises, and you're beating with sweat when everyone else seems so chilled. Turn the damn aircon on and F off. You can lose weight or get ripped just by thinking about it, and your stature is generally well balanced. Your skin has a tendency to have issues: rashes, hives, pimples, acne. Heartburn is your signal, and you're more prone to inflammatory type reactions. At your best, you speak clearly, in a position of leadership, influential, and can get anything done. You think you can do your boss's job better and aren't great in hierarchy unless you're at the top. Or you're better off starting your own thing. Your only danger is you can overcommit and burn out. You're goals-driven and a high achiever. Self-competitive sports like climbing, skiing, the gym, anything that involves you being able to improve on yourself. You hate being the least experienced in the class. Even yoga gets competitive, or you want to be the best meditator. When you're suffering and need help, you need someone with authority to tell you what to do, and you'll do it. Any waver in their confidence, and you're not on board, and think they have no idea. Why didn't they just admit this? It's like when you go to the shop and you ask the person a question, and they go, "Let me Google this." And you think, WTF? I could have done that. When you're out of balance, you seek control with everything and everyone. Maybe your food, your relationship, but really you're losing control. You become indecisive. Anger is your demon. Dietary-wise, all these people are on about how good fermented foods are, like kefir, kombucha, and sauerkraut, but you know that they don't sit well with you and they aggravate you. If this resonates with you, you are pitta dominant. So this is something that I resonate with. My dosha type is very dominant pitta with a little bit of vata and a little bit of the third one, which I will share with you. The next dosha, you might not need to guess this one. There are three. We've gone through the vatas and the pittas, and now this is for the kaphas out there. Now, the image that I have with this one is a rainy window with a heart with a sad face. And I wrote here, I Googled sad on rainy days to find this image. The vatas complain of wind, pittas about the heat and humidity, and you complain when it's cold and wet, like a rainy day. You're the most likely to have SAD, seasonal affective disorder, and your moods affect everyone around you, especially when you're down. So let's keep you in balance. Organize a beach holiday during winter. Winter gets you mopey unless you find a sport that you love like skiing. The sun does shine on the mountains. Sometimes you just need to search. You are amazing at giving support and get annoyed when others don't step up and give a hand. Why can't others see what others need to be done? God damn it. But you can do this at the expense of your own energy, supporting others at the expense of your own energy. Deep down, if you accepted it, you actually love to be supported. You're slow to make a change, but once you do, it's a done thing. You thrive on community. When out of balance, you isolate yourself and can become depressed. You are the storer and the hoarder, storer of emotions, thoughts, and things. A good clean out of your wardrobe and house can be so cleansing. Comfort is your thing. But unfortunately, you'd rather stay comfortable than go through a little bit of discomfort for a better life. For example, you can hold on to relationships for too long that don't serve, friends and partners, or too afraid to raise a little healthy conflict to allow the relationship to grow. You are the world's best procrastinator. When you get sick, it's full of mucus and puffiness. It's harder for you to shift weight, and you're great at emotional eating. Stuff back down all those hurts that want to come up. Exercise is best in short bursts and in groups. You also need a lot of sleep and are slow to wake up. You need your morning coffee, but you can burn into the night. Don't wake me up or I'll snap. You're calm, steady, loyal, and an overprotective mama or dada bear that would kill anyone who hurts your kids. You are a kapha. So those are some social media posts that I did way back to describe the doshas. Now, I go way more in depth with my teaching on doshas, and for those of you who have been with me on courses know that there is a lot more elements that can be explained when it comes to doshas, but that should be enough just to pique your interest and recognize that there is another way that you can understand yourself. And so I use the doshas in terms of teaching you how to understand yourself first, and therefore you can understand others better and be more compassionate with them. So it's not just a personality profile about how people show up in the world. It also describes their physical stature. And it's what I use to help people come back to their true nature, because we live in this very conditioned world of how we think we should do things, how we should behave, rather than coming back to what we know innately. So for some, it's easier to access than others. But I talked about it briefly, is that it was through my pain story experience. My pitta has a tendency to have massive skin issues, particularly on the acne side, and rashes as well. But it wasn't until I moved out of the hot and humid environment that my pitta calmed down. Now, it was not the only thing, because often it is an interweaving of many things. I often say physical, emotional, human, energetic, chakra, and dosha. But it was a huge part. And it was very noticeable when I moved back to Wanaka how quickly my health returned. And I had a second round of going to Brisbane. Everything came back to Wanaka, and it all healed again. It was quite remarkable. So this is when I really, through experience, got to understand the impact of environment. But it wasn't the only thing, because if you listen to the pain story and you've listened to me over time, is that I had to do a lot more emotional work around what does skin issues mean on the emotional level. And I did a whole heap of processing around that. And I did a whole bunch of action steps to move me into the place I'm in right now. And for the most part, my skin is way, way, way a million times better than what it ever was. So don't discount the impact of environment, but also don't blame everything on your environment. Doshas are not everything. And I embrace many philosophies and pick and choose what works for me, knowing that some of the things that I discount land for me later on in time. So doshas also help you start making decisions that are best for you and your constitution, rather than being influenced by, say, the marketing that tells you that fermented foods and kombucha and kefir and sauerkraut are really good for your gut, yet you're eating them and you're feeling so much worse. So a lot of people go, oh, I'm just detoxing. But, months later, if you're still detoxing, and how this usually manifests is a lot of gas and bloating, sore tummy, upset like bowel movements, and vaginal thrush for a lot of female pitters. So it's like, you've got to tune in. Is this thing actually working for me? Just because so-and-so said so does not mean it's actually good for you. So I'm always trying to encourage people to pick and choose what works for them, but we can use external guidance like the chakras, support that we might have, and we can also use the doshas. And this is where, when I teach it to practitioners, it's letting them draw on different philosophies to work out why their client is not responding to a protocol. Because protocols is when we put people into a box and we expect everyone to respond the same way. And then we get a little bit lost when we don't get creative and willing to explore other aspects that really influence our human experience. So yes, there is so much more in depth with doshas that I can go into. This is such a simplified version. There is going to be a portion of you who are like, gosh, I'm like a little bit of everything. As I said, you're going to have a little bit of everything. But if you are the person who's got a makeup of one very, very primary dosha, then you will likely resonate to what I shared in those social media posts, which I read out to you. And when I say I talk about the 3 pillars, the release process, processing your emotions, the chakras, and the doshas, I find it very difficult to separate these 3, because I have had people where the information around doshas has just landed so powerfully for them that it has given them the motivation to make some big changes in their life, down to their job, down to where they live, and how they operate in their family dynamics. So this is doshas. I teach it very differently. My chakra work is also taught very differently to what you might usually come across. And it's all in the context of understanding yourself, understanding your emotions, and what is available for you to process. So if you resonated with any of this, I would love to hear from you. Drop me some feedback. And I look forward to working with you if you want to take doshas a level deeper, either on the release course, or if you're listening to this live, the practitioner training is coming up very soon. All right, have an amazing week. Thanks for learning with me on the Art of Listening to Your Body podcast. If you like what you've heard, I would love if you could rate, review, and share with your friends. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram. My handle is The Art of Listening to Your Body. If you're interested in working with me, I offer online courses for the general public and trainings for practitioners, therapists, and coaches. I also open limited one-to-one coaching spaces throughout the year. If you would like to find out more, head to my website, drjinong.com.